Okay, so hi Maya.
Hi,
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. Okay. Thank you very much for doing this with me. I really appreciate that.
That's all right. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let's get into it. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Maya. I'm a second year SCP student at Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells NHS Trust, and I'm specialised in nuclear medicine, but I applied for medical physics undefined originally to the SCP programme.
Yeah, so how does that work? I've always wondered for
No,
you
that's a
guys
fair
in
question.
medical.
So
Yeah,
within
so how
medical
does that?
physics,
Yeah.
sorry. So within medical physics, there are four specialisms. So you've got nuclear medicine, which obviously is the best one. And then you've got radiotherapy physics. You've got imaging with non-ionizing, so MRI, ultrasound, lasers. And then you've got diagnostic and radiation safety. So whether you apply for one of those automatically from the get-go, if you know what specialism you want to specialise in your second and third year of the SCP, that's fine. But if you're not quite sure, then you can apply for undefined, because for all, I guess, 5 of the courses you can apply for, the first year is exactly the same for all of us. You do a approximately 8-week rotation throughout each of the specialisms. And then if you're undefined, you then submit around this time of year, July, August, which one you would like to specialise in for your second and third year. And then you work purely in those departments for the rest of the
Okay.
SCP.
Then, for what about those guys that apply specifically to a particular specialty within medical physics? Do they also do the same first year rotation with every other person?
They do, yeah. They're with us for everything. They still have to do their rotations and just get sort of like ground basis knowledge in every area of physics, because they are all very intertwined and we do work together a lot quite closely. But then also it gives you the opportunity to get a feel for them just in case you did want to switch specialism later on down the road. Though people are quite committed to their specialism, they're very territorial about them and happy to be in them. So you don't get people switching very often.
Yeah. But if anyone wants to switch at all, so if they do the rotation and they feel like I prefer non-ionizing, would they get the opportunity to switch if they want to?
So that's a difficult question to answer because it's very much case dependent. So when you're undefined, so if you're applying undefined, the centres will list which specialisms are an option to you in your second and third year. So for example, at Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells, when I was applying, I could choose nuclear medicine, radiotherapy, or diagnostic and radiation safety, but I couldn't choose non-ionising with them. They didn't offer that as a specialism, which was fine by me because I knew I definitely didn't want that one out of the 4. So that wasn't an issue. But then when it comes to making the choices, anyone else in your cohort who's also working in your area, so for example, especially if you're in a consortium, which take maybe 6 to 8 people per year, you've then got to compete with your colleagues because there won't be, say, 6 to 8 places in every single specialism. There will only be a set number. So there is that to consider as well. Just because you're going undefined doesn't mean you're definitely guaranteed to get whichever specialism you want at the end of it. You will need to fight for it, so to speak. It could be a smooth ride, it could be a rocky one. I can't tell, you can't make promises, it's a bit difficult, but definitely something to mention in the interview if you're worried about that. However, if you apply for a specialism directly, and you've sort of signed up for what you want to do for the rest of the STP from the get-go, if at the end of your first year you're like, actually, no, this isn't quite where I want to be, then it's up to the discretion of your trust whether or not they can support you making that change. Because the whole point is that they wanted a trainee in that specialism area to then work with them after the STP in that role, within that specialism. Yeah, it's very much at the discretion of your trust. I know when I was applying, they said if you could find someone in that specialism who wanted to switch to the specialism you were currently in, that's a nice and easy switch. But again, it's not guaranteed. It's very much trust dependent. But I believe the school
Yeah.
do provide some guidance on that at open days. So go to your SCP open days.
That's quite a good explanation because I am always very confused about the medical physics and clinical engineering as well.
We're
I'm like,
confused about it
why
too.
is
Don't
everyone?
worry.
So when you say it, for the undefined, when you say it's not guaranteed and you have to fight for your slot, probably when they take about 6 people and all that, does that mean at the end of first year you guys kind of have to take an exam or submit a proposal, or how
Oh,
do you
no.
then?
I'm not taking an extra exam for the STP. Absolutely not. We have enough exams as it is. That's not happening.
Yeah.
No. No, how it works in undefined, no matter what centre you're in, whatever trust you're at, when it comes to the end, you either, for me, I just had to submit my first choice because it was only me in my cohort here at MTW. I'm very lucky that I didn't have to fight with anyone. However, what you'll be asked to do is to rank the 4 specialisms from your favourite to your least favourite, giving reasons why, etc., etc. And then they sort of sort through them then. Majority of people get their first choice. They do try to accommodate as much as possible, and sort of stretch the rules as much as possible to accommodate everyone. So yeah, I wouldn't start to panic about applying to undefined. I know I might have made it sound quite scary. I promise it's not, but it is something I wish I knew walking into it. I got very lucky with my situation. Other people in my cohort didn't, and so my heart went out to them. But yeah, so no, I wouldn't worry. They try to accommodate as much as possible, and worst case scenario, if you're willing to move to a different trust who maybe could offer you that specialism, then both your trust and the school will do what they can to support that if it's at all possible. So,
I think it's encouraging because it sounds like it's quite flexible and they're very supportive
no,
with that as well.
definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone wants you to pick the specialism that's best for you because it is your entire career at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
medical physics is tough. Most of the people applying have already got a physics degree, which was tough enough to go through, let alone having another big decision coming up around the corner. So no, they will absolutely do whatever they can to make sure that you are where you belong and that you're happy.
I
Yes.
never liked physics. I can't imagine having to do
Is
a
it bad if I
special.
say same? But I like the maths. I really enjoyed maths at university. At university at A-level, sorry. That was my favourite subject by miles, but I really liked applying it to the real world. So physics seemed like a no-brainer, and I ended up specialising in theoretical physics as my actual degree. So I got the best of both worlds, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So just one last question about this
No, go for it,
specialty.
go for it.
Why did you choose nuclear medicine?
Oh, because it's the best, easily, hands down. There's so many little reasons that add up to me knowing, actually, no, this is definitely for me. So nuclear medicine, I felt, was the specialism that had the most variation in the job role with no 2 days or weeks even being slightly the same. There's always something going on. There's always something happening, whether it's, dealing with a patient risk assessment where you found out details about the patient. You're like, actually, no, for example, like if they're, say, incontinent or they live in a care home, and now you've got to send a radioactive patient home to deal with that. You're like, okay, right, we need to make a plan here, and or if there's, say, contamination incident on site, so whether or not drawing up went wrong, if someone dropped something, it happens rarely, but it does happen. Or if a patient is ill. So the other week we had a patient, bless her, who was ill in our corridor, so that was a fun clean up for us. But yeah, there's always little things happening on top of the already day-to-day tasks that you have. But also nuclear medicine was really refreshing for me in that I felt I got the best balance between using my pure physics knowledge and skills, because obviously there's so many equations. Think of effectively any equations you use in particle physics, obviously decay equations, because we work with radioactive material all the time. But then also on top of that, I got to dabble in various bits of chemistry and understanding different chemical compounds and what chemical compound I'm binding to this radionuclide to make sure it goes to this specific part of the body that I want to image, etc., etc. So there was quite a lot of medicine also, and anatomy involved as well. So I very much got what I felt was the best of every single world of science all wrapped into one. And on top of that, I don't know, it's just a bit thrilling to work with radioactive materials, knowing they're a bit dangerous. It makes you feel very special. But yeah, no, it was just a brilliant sum up of like all different areas of science for me. And it felt extremely rewarding to see the impact we were having on patients and getting to work with them directly too. So yeah, really rewarding area.
Okay. So I have absolutely no idea
It's okay.
about what you guys do. And yeah, I remember in chemistry and physics, I remember the radioactive decay and all that. But if you can take it down a little bit, let's
Yeah.
start from somewhere. So just make it very simple. Tell us about your specialty, then maybe a little bit more about nuclear medicine. So yeah, you've just said why you like nuclear medicine, but then take us through what the specialty is about.
Right, okay. So, nuclear medicine in its essence is using radioactive material to either treat a patient, and when we say treat, this will be for cancer patients in oncology, so treating their tumours, ideally shrinking them or completely eradicating them, or we're using radioactivity for diagnostic imaging, so obviously to diagnose various conditions, and that doesn't have to be necessarily cancer related in itself. Majority of our patients are oncology based, but yeah, several aren't. So we work very closely with the radiology department, the radiologists, who are the ones who will be meeting the patients and operating the camera with them. But then the physics team are responsible to make sure that the camera is working as it should be. So we often do quality control and quality assurance checks on the camera periodically, whether that's monthly, 6 monthly, annually, depending on the test, to make sure it's performing as it should be. On top of that, we will make sure we're annually reviewing at the very least what different radioactivity levels are being injected into patients for different procedures, because our main goal is to make sure patients are receiving enough radioactivity, whereas the images being produced are of a good enough quality to be used diagnostically by the radiologists. But also we want to keep the dose as low as possible because we want to do as little damage as possible, because obviously radioactive material emits ionizing radiation, which in turn is slightly damaging. So it's finding a fine balance between that, and that's very much where the physics and all the equations and maths comes in, and many spreadsheets and many different regulations and books to sort through. But it's really thrilling educating yourself about the world of dosimetry. It's a hole that keeps going and going and expanding every single year. There's so much research going on in it. So if you are interested in research, whether it's physics-based or chemistry-based, I'd recommend looking into dosimetry in nuclear medicine. It's a really thrilling area. And then on top of that, I will say physics are also responsible then for therapy procedures involving radioactivity. So like I said before, that will be for cancer patients. So for example, here at MTW, we treat thyroid cancer patients and prostate cancer patients, but for metastases to the bone. So where the prostate cancer has gone to the bone and caused cancer within the bone. We will use radioactivity for that. And the reason why the physicists handle it rather than the radiographers is because the doses are significantly higher and meant to be damaging to the body and those cells, because we want to kill them. We want to eradicate them as much as possible and improve patient quality of life. So that's where our amount of patient contact comes in. And so we will sit down with the patients and we won't just administer the treatments, but prior to that, when they've had their consultation with their doctor, consultant, whoever it is, we will then also meet with them and discuss their living arrangements and conduct a risk assessment for them, because they're receiving such a high dose. Once they go home, they will have to isolate themselves for a period of time, perhaps, depending on how hot, and when I say hot, I mean radioactive, they are once they leave our care. And we will give them restrictions from what they can handle, how to use the toilet. So, for example, incontinence is quite a big issue we ask about, because a lot of radioactive matter is excreted through your urine and feces, and we don't want that in contact with your skin for a very long time. But then also restrictions with the public, and especially children and pregnant people, because they are most at risk in terms of ionizing radiation, providing more damage to them because they are younger. And when I say pregnant people, I mean obviously the fetus in this case rather than the mother themselves. But yeah, so those are the main areas of work we do. And then on top of that, there's always something happening. Always.
Wow. Now I completely understand why you said specialties thrilling because wow, that sounds
It's
like
a
a
lot, isn't
lot.
it? But it's a lot of
Wow,
variation.
I'm amazed, honestly. I've never had an idea what nuclear medicine is about. Wow, I find this really interesting, honestly. Okay, so you've been talking about a lot of radioactive, radio this, radio that. So I'm then wondering, what then is the difference between your specialty and radiotherapy?
Yeah. So nuclear medicine and radiotherapy both use ionizing radiation to treat their patients. And then that's about where the similarity ends, to be honest with you. So how nuclear medicine do it, we are making the patients themselves radioactive. We are inputting, whether it's IV, tablet, whatever, we're making our source the patient and then imaging them. Whereas in radiotherapy or even X-ray CT, so the world of diagnostics, it's the machine that's then producing ionizing energy and effectively, for want of a more scientific term, zapping the patient to then either treat them in radiotherapy. So a whole treatment plan will have been made in radiotherapy that will have been checked and assured by physics as the final check before it's administered. And obviously in radiotherapy, high energy ionizing dose to treat and ideally kill or shrink a tumor. Whereas in X-ray CT, a less powerful ionizing radiation, lower dose, because then they want to image the patient rather than treat an area of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So, wow. Okay, I'm gonna ask another question. So, the radioactive materials, do you guys make it yourselves in your department?
No, we don't, thank God. I don't feel I'd be responsible enough to be able to do that. So no, so we have these things called radiopharmacies. So it's like a typical pharmacy, except all the chemicals and pharmaceuticals being made up are radioactive. So we don't have one on site at this trust. We have one in Medway, which we use. And then also, I know several of the London trusts have their own. Don't ask me on the rest of the country. I'm most familiar with Kent and London, I'm afraid. But within those radiopharmacy, they have their own radiopharmacy workers who then obtained a radioactive material for us, whether it's being shipped in from abroad or they're making it from generators themselves, which live on site at whichever hospital. So yeah, and then we just order what we want the day before and it magically turns up for us the day of treatment, which is quite nice. And our only responsibility is to say how much radioactivity we would like in whatever concentration. So it comes in a small vial and then it's up to us to then draw it up out of that, make sure we've got the activity we want drawn up, and then we administer it to our patient.
Oh, sounds like a lot of calculations will be going on at
A
work.
lot of maths, a lot of maths.
Okay, so because my specialty is cancer genomics, I kind of understand some things you're talking about. So, when you talk about shrinking the tumor and targeting the tumor in the patient's bone and all that, is it usually targeted? Do you guys have a way of specifically attacking the patient's tumor, or does it also attack other cells in the patient's body?
So it depends what they're having in terms of. So diagnostic imaging, it might be a bit different. So for example, if you don't know where the tumours are, or if you don't know if a tumour is metastasized, you want to sort of attack everything, but the tumour will naturally uptake more of the radioactivity. But then that's when the whole physics side comes into play of injecting as little as possible into the patient to ensure the least damage is done to healthy cells. Enough damage is done to the tumour that they've uptaken enough radioactivity and light up in the images for the doctor to then diagnose the patient. However, if we're wanting to target a tumour specifically, we will ensure that for whatever tumour type it is, so say for prostate cancer, we will take radium, which naturally will go to the bones because it falls into the same, my chemistry knowledge is coming into play now, the same column on the periodic table, the same group as calcium. And obviously we all know the bones uptake calcium, so they almost think the radium is acting as calcium almost and uptake it itself, which is why it's good to then attack bone metastases. But to ensure it's latching onto the prostate specific ones, we then will bind our radium with PSMA. And what this PSMA does, it's the perfect match essentially, for prostate cells. So, back in biology, admittedly, I haven't done biology since AS, but when different cells and different antigens, antibodies, whatever it was we were learning about, they had their own unique shapes that exactly complemented each other. It's effectively like that all over again. So it knows exactly where to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, I find this so interesting. Wow, thank you for teaching me
That's
about what
okay.
you guys. Okay, so that means a good knowledge of biology, chemistry, then maths and physics would really play an important role in this specialty, right?
No, definitely it would. Obviously, I'd say having having your best experience being in maths and physics is the most important, because obviously being part of the medical physics specialties is very physics heavy. And then after that, I say it's sorry. After that, I would say it's the most chemistry heavy. And then a little bit of biology. You don't really need to have the best biology understanding to do this. And any biology you do need to know, or even chemistry you need to know, you will be taught it as part of your academic training at university. So in the Southeast, we all go to KCL for our medical physics, clinical science, M.Sc that we're getting through the STP. And yeah, any experience you need that isn't physics or maths knowledge, you will be taught there. So don't worry if it's not your area of expertise. It's definitely not mine.
Yeah. So when you say KCL, I assume that's King's College.
It
King's
is King's
College,
College London. Yes, we go to King's College
London.
London for about 3 months in the first year, approximately 3 months, but it's more over the period of 3 months, a week here and there in second year. And then that's it. The exams in your first and second year, but then your third year is completely your master's project. So you won't have any in-person lectures for that. It'll purely just be working at your trust on your project.
So for the first 3 months that you guys spend in university, does the STP expense stipend cover for it?
The
The
expenses,
the expense, because I
yes.
can imagine what it's like to stay in London for 3 months. That's very expensive.
It's a lot. Yeah, definitely. So thankfully, because I live in Kent, it was an easy commute for me. So I did just decide to commute. But for my peers who had travelled from a lot further away, who did decide to stay in London, then yes, absolutely everything is covered by your expenses. So you receive 2,000 a year from the national school that's given to your trust for you to use on whatever you need within the STP. So whether it's travelling expense, hotel expense, food expense, conferences, materials for your master's project, anything related to the STP will be covered completely. So yeah, you don't need to worry about that, and it doesn't take up a giant chunk of the 2,000. I can promise you there will be enough left over to use for experiences that you want to go on.
I can imagine, because when I started the STP, I spent 3 weeks in Manchester, and it literally took all the money. So I'm trying to imagine spending 3 months in London. Jeez, that's gonna be
I think the
very
majority of people did end up commuting. First year was the most heavy. I think it was 8 weeks straight. We were at King's from September to November-ish time, but then it was a lot more manageable in second year because it was only like a week here and there over the course of January to March, so it wasn't as bad. Yeah.
No, okay. So, talking about, when you mentioned making a plan for the patients when they get home and contact with people, it made me to remember an experience I previously had. I was a HCA in the hospital, and I remember some of our patients, when they come back from some procedure, they'll kind of cover the curtain and they'll ask us not to have contact with the patient, that they've had some cancer-related procedures. I'm definitely sure it will be that
Yeah, we might be
radioactive.
responsible for that.
And
Definitely
they'll be
that's
like,
our fault.
if you're pregnant, don't go in. They kind of leave the
Yeah.
patient that way for some hours. That's really interesting. Okay, so still on your specialty, what was the transition from first year to second year like for you? Because I know for us in first year we do a lot of observations and we do a lot of external rotations. So for you in nuclear medicine, what was that experience like?
So admittedly, I did find it all quite daunting. I wanted to immerse myself as much as possible into the department, but I didn't really know where to start because there is so much work that is done, but such a variety. But also because the work done in our department takes a lot of training, you can't just off you go with it. It's quite serious stuff if you get it wrong. It can have quite detrimental effects to not just the patient, but yourself or the public or even the environment if you're handling radioactivity not safely. So, as an STP, once you've specialised, not just in nuclear medicine, but I'd say any area of medical physics, the focus is again not just on continuing your observations and shadowing and building up that routine, but then shadowing for a little bit, then working with your colleagues who are already registered on whatever activity it might be, to then observing you carrying out the activity yourself, and you're building up confidence before you're finally signed off. So I very much wanted to jump into the deep end and experience everything at once, but the world just doesn't work like that. But also what I didn't realize is how overwhelming that would then be, because as I'm sure you might experience as well, every single thing you observe and experience, you then have to write up about. Writing up is a lot easier said than done. It's very time consuming. So you definitely want to pace yourself and what you're experiencing. Focus on one thing at a time. It can be quite exciting to be like, okay, now I can go and do it all. But no, pace yourself. Focus on learning every bit. You'll have more than enough time to experience everything. And I got a lot of imposter syndrome, I guess, at the start of my second year. I was very aware of how much I didn't know in the first few months. And I remember talking to my colleagues about this, and they went, well, obviously, you're not meant to know anything at all. Why are you sitting there expecting to know everything? You've got 2 years ahead of you to learn. And even after that, you will continue to keep learning throughout the rest of your career. If you're watching this and feeling a bit of imposter syndrome, I promise it will get better. But also, as the new trainees then come in, so we got a new bout, obviously STPs, but also some apprentices. And when I was teaching and training them little bits that I knew, it was very reassuring to be like, actually, I've learned so much over the space of a year. Like, who knew I knew all this? So that was very reassuring in itself. So I promise you, you also know a lot more than you probably give yourself credit for. So yeah, so my best advice, first and second year, would just be take everything one step at a time. Make sure you have a good training plan for your specialism that you've made up. You sort of segregated and grouped different competencies together. So then you can be like, okay, well, these are all imaging related, or these are all quality control checks on the machines related. This is therapy related. What experiences are coming up in the calendar first, and which ones should I concentrate on first? And then just go through it like that, because like I said, you will have the opportunity to go through everything. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for more knowledge from other people who might have done the STP, who are Route 2s. Of course, your training officer and head of the department, they're the ones who know everything, or at least I like to think they do. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out and speak to people, because everyone will have either had your experience or have felt the way you're feeling at some point in their career. So let them help you.
I always find it refreshing speaking to STPs, especially in other specialties, and realizing that, yeah, we're all facing the same thing. I told you,
Definitely.
yeah, this week that I felt like my brain was on fire, because that's the part of writing up the competencies.
I know.
When I get home and I'm trying to explain to my husband, I'm trying to write this, and it feels like you've done this, just write it. But it's more than that.
It's
You
so
are
much
putting,
more than that.
yeah, you need to organize your writing. You look at the considerations to make sure you've touched on everything. I find it's not as easy as it seems. It's not easy as it
It's
seems. There's,
definitely not.
yeah, the imposter syndrome as well. Well, that was a lot as well. But I also found the support as well with my colleagues, with my senior SCPs. That like, you get into it, you're going to be fine. So yeah, the support is also great as well. So you are never alone. Once you speak to someone, they are always happy to help. And yeah, it's been going on
No,
well.
definitely. We all know the struggle. We don't want anyone to struggle unnecessarily, because we're all going to struggle anyway in some way, shape, or form. So, like, I always feel for those in like the SCP in the year below me. It's like, I want to help you as much as possible to make this as smooth as possible for you. So yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about a typical day or a typical week in your life. So can you take us through what a day in your life is like, what you actually do on daily basis when you get to work?
I come in, sit down, and contemplate my life choices is usually how it begins.
Oh my
Have a
goodness, come on.
coffee. No, but in all seriousness, so like I briefly mentioned before, I rely on my training plan as my sort of lifeline and my diary. There's so many areas involved in nuclear medicine, so many different competencies to consider, but also so much happening at any given time. It's like, okay, what am I actually going to devote this week to with competency or section of competencies? Because please group your competencies together if you can and don't struggle unnecessarily. It's not worth it. But yeah, so usually on the Monday, I will decide what I want to do for that week. If there's QA coming up for that week, I might then work on my QA competencies and see which tests on the machine I need to do. But also, if there is QA coming up, it's also an excellent opportunity for me to then practice my clinical skills. So I'm recently learning how to draw up radionuclides, which is a lot harder than it sounds, especially because I'm still getting over my fear of needles. Because obviously you don't want a needle sick injury if it's radioactive. You don't want a needle sick injury, full stop. So yeah, so that's a whole thing to consider. So it is quite fun to make sure you're practicing your clinical skills as well as focusing on your competencies. But then also what I like to do, if I know I have got experience coming up that week in something, whatever it is, I like to make sure that at least the day before or several days before, I'll have looked up into legislation and guidance and read around the area. So I'm not just walking into a shadowing experience blind. Because so some shadowing experiences come up very often, some come up once in a blue moon. You need to make sure you're prepared, especially for the once in a blue moon ones, and you're not just going in knowing nothing, because you need to ask your questions at that point, make sure you're getting stuck in, take pictures of everything you're doing, record everything as much as possible. To make sure that you're then properly equipped when it gets on later in the week, as I like to think, where I can then sit down and focus on writing up everything I've done. And like we were saying, writing up is a lot easier said than done. So often I like to just bullet points, sort of like just get a list of everything that's happened, the questions I maybe now have reflecting on the work I've just previously done, that I need to then go and speak to the colleague I was shadowing and ask those follow-up questions, make sure I've got that basis. But then also something I'd recommend to trainees, especially younger ones, when you're walking into a shadowing experience, always ask the person you're shadowing, where can I find more information about this? So, for example, in nuclear medicine, there's usually a specific piece of legislation that links to this, whether it's IRR, whatever. You don't need to know what those mean. But also there's a lot of guidance books as well. So there could be guidance from IPEM, who are the people who accredit our M.Sc degrees. They provide a lot of guidance. So there's often a guidance book, say, on gamma cameras or on PET or different therapies, that is essentially going to be your Bible for that write-up, and will have everything you need, or at least every area you should consider and cover within your write-up, that you can then research later on in looking up papers on Google Scholar and sort of like jumping from there on what you need to know. So that's what I'll focus on later in the week, solidifying my knowledge and seeing if I have any follow-up questions from whatever I witnessed during the week. So, but again, it's easier said than done, because I feel like something always comes up that has to distract me from whatever I had planned that day. So don't beat yourself up if that happens too. Plans change.
Do you get a study day? Since you guys do your university in blocks, after that, do you get any study day to maybe write up your competencies and all that?
Yeah, so I have one work from home day a week that I've got allocated to do whatever I want in. So whilst I'm attending university, I will then most likely use that for either revision or coursework. But at the moment, because obviously it's summer, I will now use that for competency write-up time, which I can obviously do still at work. That's completely allowed. But it's nice to just have a day at home with no distractions and just try and finish something and get it submitted onto one file.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I will continue to have that. And then in addition, so I'm currently, of course, I've already started my master's project, but once it's more at the planning stage right now, once it sort of properly gets going, I will have not just that work from home day to concentrate on my write-ups, but I will also have another set day to concentrate purely on my master's project, 1 day a week, just to do whatever I need to do for that. So no, my trust have been very accommodating and very supportive in making sure that as long as I'm getting my work done, they don't really care how I do it, which is quite nice.
Oh, that's cool. Then talking about the master's research, have you submitted your proposal then? Is it called proposal? Yeah, the one you're
Yeah.
doing second.
Yes, I have submitted my proposal. King's wanted them really early from us. So no, I've submitted it, it's been approved, and I've sort of got cracking on it now. Is your next question going to be what is it? Because if
Oh
so, I've
my
got some
God.
funky things to show you.
Okay, do you want to tell us about it then?
In the smallest nutshell, it's essentially so when you work with ionizing energies or radioactivity, you are given personal dosimeters to monitor how much ionizing radiation you're coming into contact with and making sure it's not exceeding legal limits, right? So, as a nuclear medicine physicist, I get a whole body badge, which usually I wear at my hips, but so I don't forget it, I put it on my lanyard, and then also rings when I'm handling radioactivity. And there's a lot of debate in research and papers for not just the positioning of where the badges are on your body or for the ring ones, which finger in position and whatever is best, but also if you can then ratio mathematically, obviously, the dose you're receiving at, say, your fingertips, which is going to be much higher than the dose on your ring, which is further down your finger, and sort of figuring out the maths between that, which will then help not just classified workers in nuclear medicine, but also radiopharmacy, because they are handling the biggest doses out of all of us. So I've made 2 phantoms of my hand out of the wax used to make boluses and radiotherapy, to then hold a vial and a syringe of what will be a radioactivity. I'll use technetium. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
monitor the hands for ages, see what results I get, see what the math says, a bit of statistics, and see where I go from there. But everyone's very hopeful that I can get the results published. And I'm like, let's hope it goes well then. So we'll see where it
Yeah,
goes. But yeah, it is quite common to get your work published in medical physics because it is such an innovative field. So that can be very exciting to think about.
wow, that sounds really exciting. I hope it goes well for you. I wish you all the best with
Thank
that.
you.
So then, because I know the STP is a lot already and it's very intense, but with what you've explained, it feels like there's more in your specialty and it sounds like it's more demanding. So how are you balancing life on the STP, but as a trainee, your personal life, making sure you're not burnt out at any point? How are you managing everything?
Yeah, so it is, like you said, a lot. The STP, not just in my specialisms, but like literally any specialism, it's very intense. Sometimes more intense than people originally told me when I signed up for it. And it's very hard not to make work your entire life, to center everything around your workload and get bogged down with making sure you're doing everything on time and keeping up with the progress target on one file, which is much more ambitious than I feel realistic. So I try to, as much as possible, I try to work nonstop within my working hours and not procrastinate and chat to my colleagues a bit too much, which I am very guilty for. So then I don't have to work over my contracted hours. Occasionally I do, especially coming up to big deadlines. And personally, I'm fine with that. I don't really mind. I enjoy this job for a reason. I'm doing all this for a reason because I love it so much. So I don't really mind giving it some of my personal time. But I definitely recommend making sure you have, if you're an introvert like me, making sure you have at least one big thing a month to look forward to, whether it's a big outing with your friends, annual leave, and to look forward to, just some plans, anything, making sure there's, light at the end of the tunnel. for you to look forward to when the competency writing gets a bit too much. But also remember, even if you think everything's going okay and you're doing great for months on end, do remember to still even then give yourself a break. Don't always give yourself a break once you've reached a point of exhaustion, because the more often you give yourself smaller breaks, the less likely you are to reach that point, obviously, right? And try to keep weekends free as much as possible. They're your weekends for a reason. Try not to work on them. Again, it is easier said than done sometimes. And try to make sure you have some sort of social life of some regard, whether it's you pursue a hobby outside of work or you're involved in a sports club or whatever. Have something that you can completely turn your brain off from work for, because I think it's fair to say the majority of the time, even when I'm at home, all I think about is work or what I'm going to do next, or I wonder how that's going to go, blah, blah, blah. It's very hard to switch off because it is so just time consuming, but also just so intricate and so many different things involved. So yeah, make sure you have something where you can just switch your brain off and just have a complete change of space, surroundings, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you also gave me that advice, and someone else told me that after first year, I should make sure I take a break to kind of take it all in before I get into second year. And now I'm planning that, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, I just want to just have a time to relax before I
You
get into second.
deserve it. You deserve it so much. I'm glad you've booked something. And no, because
Yeah.
like as I was saying before, the jump between first and second year, it's not a jump in terms of, oh, it's challenging. It's more a jump in terms of, okay, this is now a big change in circumstances and what I'm doing as part of my weekly job routine, so to speak. Because obviously you're specialised now, you're not so general on your rotations. So no, reward yourself with a nice big break whilst you can have one. I definitely recommend. Same with between second and third year. Before your master's project starts properly kicking off, reward yourself with some annual leave, because how I see the next and upcoming year, maybe this is a bit pessimistic of me, but it's going to be all masters, 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 absolute chaos of getting the masters not just done and some good results, but written up on top of
Oh
all the
God.
other write-ups I have to do. But then after
Yeah,
that,
the
jumping
competencies
into
as well. Oh my
so
goodness.
much. But then once the masters is submitted and say that era is over, very quickly then is followed up by the final year assessment that a national school do for the STPs. And then I know I'm a warrior, I'm an overthinker, so I know then I'm going to be completely fixated on that and making sure I'm as prepared for that as I can be. But then after that, the STP is practically over. So small breaks in third year, but yeah, big break between second and third year people. A big break before
Yeah.
your master's kicks off.
And fingers crossed we'll get through it no matter what. Okay, so let's get back to where it all started from, the STP application. So what was your application experience, and what did you do? Was it your first application, and what did you do differently to present an outstanding STP application?
So I am very aware that my STP application experience is a minority compared to most people, and I'm an extremely lucky girl because I got in on my first go. I know. I was also shocked because most people say, on the whole, especially in medical physics, regardless of specialized, undefined, most people tend to get in on their second or third go. And that's completely what I was expecting. But I still obviously gave it my all first time round, because I was more curious to see how far I could go. It turns out the whole way. But yeah, no, so I'm very aware of the fact that I'm extremely lucky that that was the way it turned out, and I'm very grateful for it. So my plan was, I decided I wanted to do the STP in sort of mid-second year of university. Before that, I had absolutely no clue what I wanted, and I hadn't properly considered medical physics until I decided to do a biophysics optional module in my third year, and absolutely loved it. I knew that that was what I wanted. But unfortunately, this was the COVID era, when I was in these years of university. So getting work experience was a lot easier said than done. However, I had again got extremely lucky and managed to get a week of work experience in a radiotherapy department. So I witnessed a lot of the treatment plans being made, QA on the machines, and that just gave me a basis of not just the work that's undertaken, but also that, yeah, this is actually what I wanted to do. So I was considering applying in my third year of university and just doing a bachelor's in physics. Well, theoretical physics was my degree, but it would have been a B.Sc anyway. But I decided I wasn't quite ready to leave university yet. I still wanted to stay for a little bit. And also I was still toying with the idea of maybe would I have preferred to do research? So I did an integrated master's as part of my course, so a 4-year undergraduate course, which as much as I did enjoy it, did confirm with me that no, I do not want to do research, which was quite good. So then in my 4th year, I decided to apply for the STP. I went to pretty much every open day available in the southeast, and quite a lot of them are online now. And when I say open day, I'm not talking STP generally. They do medical physics specific ones. So I recommend going onto the National School website. They have a link to various open days happening for all the specialisms, but also IPEM had a lot of information for different medical physics open days that were happening. So I would recommend attending as many as you can. Like I said, majority are online, just to give you a basis of what to expect, understanding of the competition out there, and the sort of experience other people have, because the majority of people who do get on the course but also are applying do have quite a lot of experience in the field, often as techs, so essentially a band below the clinical scientists. A lot of techs go on to become clinical scientists, whether it's through STP or Route 2. So yeah, and just seeing what questions other people are asking if you can't think of any questions yourself at that point, and it's the best way to get a full understanding of what you're actually applying for. When it comes to the application process, I panicked and thought all of it was going to be incredibly difficult, but it wasn't as nearly as bad as I'd built it up to be in my head, which was quite nice. So the SJT, personally, I found okay. I did practice with, I've forgotten their Instagram handle now. I think it's STP Buddies.
STP blog?
Yeah, maybe that one. Yeah, and they've got a PDF that they've made of different SJT questions. Yeah,
that's
yes. Yeah, thank you. See, you're on it compared to me. I bought their PDF, and this isn't like an ad or like a promotion or whatever. Like, genuinely, I absolutely loved it. I needed that so badly, because if I didn't have it, I do think I would have passed the SJT, but definitely not with the confidence or necessarily the grade that I would have gotten. I don't know what grade I got. You never find out, which is a bit annoying. But it definitely helped me get into that mindset of how not just the questions in the SJT are going to be, but how people who are going to end up interviewing me or assessing my written assessment are thinking when it comes to what I need to write or the opinions I need to have or how I need to go about specific situations. Because sometimes the answer I would give is, oh, well, this is definitely what I would do if I was in this situation in real life. And whilst that answer was acceptable, it wasn't the most optimal. And so it was nice to see sort of like the catches, so to speak, of how you should actually be handling different matters, because this is my sort of first big girl job, if you like. I had part-time jobs at university, but I still very much had to get into that sort of professional sort of healthcare mindset still. So that was very good for educating me on that. And I used what I'd learned from that booklet in writing my written assessment. So how it was done, I know in the application year that's just gone, they did split it into various sections, the writing bit. When I applied, it was just all one big thing on about 2 pages. But on the whole, it is divided into your sort of scientific experience and skills, and then also your personal skills. And the biggest piece of advice I can give is to look through the person specification when you're writing your application. It doesn't matter about specialism. This has nothing to do with Nuke Med anymore. No matter your specialism, your written assessment will be marked according to the person specification. Every single point on that person's specification will be looked at by your assessor, and they will grade each point on how well they think your written assessment has met it. So, for example, say one of the points could be analysis skills. I know I spoke about the work I'd done in labs at university. For that part, I still decided to keep it quite scientific at that point. So I talked about different labs experience, research experience that I'd done, dissertations I've written, my master's project, and I all linked them to that. And then say on a scale of 0 to 3, my assessor would be like, this is the score, I think she's met that point. And they'll go through it like that. So make sure you've got at least a bit of evidence for each point, explain why that evidence meets that point, but then also maybe reflect on, if you don't have evidence for a point, how would you theoretically go about showcasing that point in clinical experience if you were on the STP? Because especially if you don't have experience in the job field like I didn't, you do sort of get in your head of going, oh God, how am I going to meet this point? How am I going to explain that I can showcase this really well when my experience is working in my student union nightclub? It's not very healthcare related, but you can always find a way of spinning it to showcase that you do actually have those skills. So all the rankings for the points are then added up, and then the highest scores rank the highest at the end of the written bit, and then it goes on and so forth, and added to your SJT results, of course. So that's the biggest piece of advice I can give: person specification, and also make sure your application includes any information and motivation for the NHS values. Trust values mirror NHS values pretty much, so just focus on NHS ones, because you won't know what trusts you're going to at that point. But also something that hadn't dawned on me until a good way through first year. So like we've been saying, throughout all of our training, we've got various competencies on activities we need to do, and then the whole point of the competency is to then write up about it. And you can look up to see what competencies the National School want you to fulfill with each specialism. It's not sensitive information or guarded, it's accessible for anyone on the internet. And within each task or activity that you then have to write up about or gain experience in, there are various considerations that the National School want to make sure you've included as well. So whether that's the patient experience or legislation, whatever it may be, it didn't cotton on to me that that's an exact mirror of the application process as well. They want to see how well you can take these consideration points and then say, well, I've got this experience. This is how it showcases that I've either got this skill, developed this skill, learned something new in this area, or I learned a little bit about this skill, but I feel like with more experience, or if I got to experience this in a different way, this is how I could showcase that even more. It was very much still that writing style. And so basically your application process is seeing, well, can they do this? Are they going to be able to do competency write-ups? And I feel like that's what catches a lot of people out. Be as reflective as possible in your application, because everything is about reflective writing now in the STP. And it does take practice. It really does take practice. Yeah. For the written part, that's my biggest advice. A lot. I apologize, but yeah.
I don't think it's, I would say it's a lot in that, I don't know, however, but I think it's very detailed, because whoever is applying to the SCP is really hoping to get in. So I'm always a big fan of getting that detailed explanation of what is expected of them, because it's one thing to apply for the SCP, because once you've applied, that's it. You won't find out anything till the next 6 months. So it's very important that you present the best possible application to increase your chances of getting it. So yeah, I like the advice you're giving and how you took your time to explain everything, because I keep telling them, yeah, of course I chat with most of the applicants. It's not enough to say I have analytical skills, I have good communication skills. You can't just do that. What is it that you've done that demonstrate that you have the analytical skills, which is the examples you talked about? So yeah, it's very detailed and I love that. So that's you like to learn. Then what about your interview experience?
So my interview experience, again, was a little bit different to how the STP interview experience is being done now, because it was still very much the COVID system when I was applying. So when I did mine, I knew the trust I was going to be interviewing. I'd already been assigned a trust before my interview. So I, of course, knew which trust I was going to be interviewed by. And my interview was very much a sort of not just a does she know her stuff, but do we get on? Do we like each other? Is this something that we want to pursue? Whereas currently your interviews are held by a trust that you have put down on your list of choices to apply for, but not necessarily the trust you're going to. So the best are the interview. My interview was definitely not as good as I wanted it to be. I was probably more nervous after my interview than before it. It didn't go the way I wanted. I very much panicked, but that's okay. Don't worry, just because your interview, you might think it flopped, doesn't necessarily mean it did. I wouldn't worry, but also they know you're human. I watch people do interviews now and I'm like, you really don't need to stress it. Nowhere near as big of a deal as you're making it to be in your head, but I completely understand why you're absolutely nervous and petrified here in front of me. So the best, the best advice I can give is go back through the person specification, because some points will have been denoted as interview only points. Make sure you know that, because they will come up. Obviously, they're interview only. Make sure you have something to say about all of them. Make sure you also know a little bit about the trusts you've applied for in terms of maybe their trust values. Like I said before, they're going to be very similar to the NHS values. So if you're like me and you applied for absolutely every single location area, because getting on the STP was my only priority, I didn't care where they sent me, then don't worry about going through every single trust and their values. The NHS values is enough. But also reflect on what the job role actually is. Because remember, they're hiring a trainee, they're not hiring a clinical scientist. The whole point is that they want you to be sort of a little block that they can mold and train to be as they want. It's okay that you're not perfect, and you need to show that you're open to learning, especially if you've already got experience. You're like, oh, well, I do all of this way, and this is how I'm used to it. And whilst that's great, and absolutely you can then bring knowledge to whatever trust you go to, you need to be open to learning things a different way, or learning things again from scratch as well, because everyone will want to train in their own specific way and style that the trust approves of, because it will be your trust signing off all your work. So make sure you're nice to them. What other advice would I give? Deep breaths throughout the whole thing. Just take it one step at a time. Ask them to reword questions if you need to. This is very much not them assessing, are you a good enough candidate, but also them wanting to get to know you as well. So a lot of things I was asked very much exceeded my knowledge at that point, or I completely froze up. But having the confidence to go, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you maybe explain and then word the question a different way? Which my assessors were very happy to do. And then I'd be like, okay, now I know, and here's your answer. Or majority of the time, and this is why I thought it was a flop, it was me going, well, I'm not sure, but this is what I think it would be, and then explaining my thoughts around that. And as I learned, once I actually started my rotations, the majority answers I gave were absolutely wrong, but humbling. But my thinking analysis for getting to those answers was bang on the money. So the reasons why I thought it might be certain ways. So for example, I remember one of the questions I had absolutely no clue about. We were talking about radiotherapy because I'd done my bit of work experience in that. So it was at that point the specialism I knew the most about compared to the other three. And they were asking me, oh, in QA, how big do you think the errors are? And I was like, well, I know they're small. They're like, yeah, but how small? Like, are we talking centimeters, millimeters, nanometers? And I was sitting there going, I don't know, tiny. Obviously, they've got to be, but then how tiny is tiny, and does it depend on the test? And I just voiced my train of thought, even though it was jumping here, there, everywhere. And it was that exact train of thought that they were looking for in that sort of critical analysis of, no, I don't know the answer, but I know I'm roughly getting there, even if I can't give a definitive, this is the answer. So don't be afraid to talk out loud, whatever your thought process is. And like I said, I thought mine went terribly because I didn't know the majority of the answers, but turns out they thought I was an absolute hoot, and that they liked my train of thought, they liked my critical thinking, and they thought I was perfect to be then a trainee, to then learn more and then eventually hopefully be a good clinical scientist.
Yeah, yeah. I think that part of demonstrating your critical thinking is very important, rather than just be like, I don't know. I like the fact that you're
Exactly.
like, I'm not sure, but I think. So yeah, that's why a trainee should be someone that is willing to learn, and as a scientist as well, showing that yeah, you have that mind to think and explore topics. So, yeah, I think so. Wow, it's been very awesome speaking with you. So, one last thing before we go. What is one thing you wish you knew before you started the ST?
There's so many. I think I didn't properly realize how intense it would be. And when I say intense, I mean in terms of the sheer amount of work there is to do, rather than the work being impossibly hard. The work isn't that hard. It's challenging, sure, of course. That's what makes the job so exciting, but it's definitely not impossible. And you have like so many people around you who can help if you need it. So never worry about, am I going to be out of my depth academically in this job? But juggling my work life, social life, workload, potential burnout, having enough breaks, making sure I'm hitting everything I need to be deadline wise. That was just a lot. So, time management skills and using a diary effectively is definitely the biggest things for me, and also not being a perfectionist, because nothing about this journey is going to be perfect. Not at all. So there's no such thing as a perfect trainee. There's no such thing as a perfect clinical scientist. There's definitely no such thing as a perfect STP experience. Just take everything as it comes and be realistic about what you're capable with. So some weeks and months, you might be absolutely flying through the workload and the competencies and everything's great. Other months, you might need to take it a bit slower, and that's perfectly okay. It's very much a marathon, not a sprint. But also give yourself credit for how far you've come. Recognize the achievements that you've achieved along the way, no matter how big or small they are. But also be assured in the fact that when it does come to the end of it, you are going to be an incredible clinical scientist. I speak to people who've recently finished the STP, whether it was coming up to the end of this year or last year's cohort. And they go, God, I don't know anything. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're a dictionary. You do the majority of my training. Like, I think you know so much. And they go, no, I don't think I do. And I'm like, oh my God, but I feel that way. And then everyone in the year below me is like, what are you on about? You know so much. So it's very much just a circle of life for STP trainees, that feeling. Yeah, try not to get in your head too much about anything. Just enjoy the experience. It's a lot, but it's incredibly rewarding and incredibly supportive. So yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone. It's a brilliant career. Yeah.
Ah, thank you so much, Maya.
You're
This is
very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You took me through your specialty, and I think I'm sure I picked one or two things about it, and then you explained the medical physics specialty very well. I'm sure anyone hoping to apply to medical physics or nuclear medicine list that would watch this video, I'm sure they would really appreciate all the advice, all the tips, and everything you've shared in this video. So thank you so much, Maya. I really
No
appreciate that.
worries. No worries at all. And anyone applying or who have applied and they're waiting to hear how the interviews went, I wish you the best of luck. I really hope it goes well for you.
Thank you.